Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's episode, we got to go back into Flèche Wallonne because, of course, we've seen some interviews from Remco Evenepoel talking about why he failed so bad on Mur de Huy on yesterday's Flèche Wallonne. Well, he says in his interview, multiple interviews that I read, I'm sure quoting the same quotes that Remco Evenepoel said, where he was cold, he took off his jackets too soon at Flèche Wallonne. Well, I went back into the videos to check out just exactly what he was wearing and when he took his jackets off. Now we see when the racing starts, he is starting with a jacket. He's got his jersey on underneath it. That's why we see the numbers on the back there covered up. So he has one jacket on. It's the team color jacket though. Then it's going to start raining. We're going to start seeing a bunch of the peloton start wrapping themselves up when the cameras come on proper. Around 150 kilometers ago is when everyone starts dressing up even more. We're going to see Remco Evenepoel. He's going to put his black jacket on. Black jacket normally means that's the full rain jacket. It's difficult for manufacturers to produce real waterproof jackets in multiple colors with, of course, all the sponsor lettering and stuff like that on. Normally the sponsor lettering's done a little bit different on the rain jacket because the material's not screened, whatever the official word is for the factories that are producing it. But that kind of rain material is normally not in the team colors because it's difficult to do. So when you see him wearing his black jacket, that's his pure rain jacket. When you see him wearing a colored jacket, that's coloring up his numbers. That jacket can be waterproof to a degree, but it does not have hours worth of waterproof. It's more of a spring mist, if you want to call it. It'll keep the wind off you really good. It'll keep some of the water off. It will help keep you warm, but it's definitely not waterproof like the black jacket is. So as we see all the riders are wearing their black jackets, I want to point out that Remco Evenepoel has two jackets on, no gloves, shoe covers, but no leg warmers. Now he's talking about being cold, and this is about 150 kilometers to go still at Flèche Wallonne when the cameras are coming on, and we see he decided to go without leg warmers and without gloves. Now throughout my career, I can guarantee you that if I had a rain jacket on and two jackets on, I certainly had my gloves on. If I have shoe covers on, most likely, unless we're talking about a time trial, I'm wearing gloves, long finger gloves. I usually raced without race gloves, but when it's cold and stuff, I'd always have, of course, long finger gloves on. And because of how late I raced in my age, I always had a problem with being cold in the races. So most of the time, if you saw me in the bike races in my later career, I would have leg warmers on, shoe covers on, gloves on. I'd have a hat, of course, because I have no hair. And you'd be amazed the difference if you're a bald guy without hair, what it's like and how cold you are affected by just even the breeze. But once you get the rain and the breeze and the speed of the bikes, it's dramatic difference of temperature loss out the top of your head if you don't have hair. So I'd always have a cap on. Remco Evenepoel's young kid, he's got a full head of hair, he doesn't need a cap. But if we go back and we'll look at one of the riders, we look at Magnus Cort Nielsen from Uno X. He's covered up about the way that I would be, where you see he's got the gloves on, the shoe covers, the leg warmers, and a lot of the Lidl Trek riders, they have some kind of knee warmers or leg warmers on too. So right away when I look at Remco Evenepoel, if he's talking about being cold at the end and explaining why he had a bad Flèche Wallonne, well, he's not just taking his jacket off later in the race that's making him cold. He's not dressed properly to begin with. Put some leg warmers on, put some gloves on for sure, and the two jackets I'm okay with, and maybe you're wearing a hat, but like I said, he's got a full head of hair so he can make his own decision there. Okay, we take up the race in at Flèche Wallonne into about 70 kilometers to go. If I back the film up, we know that Lidl Trek was racing on the front. I already called them knuckleheads at the butterfly effect, and we know later, of course, Skillmost will crash, so Lidl Trek's performances won't matter so much in terms of how they are dressed. We start looking over at Tadej Pogačar. Same scenario that we saw, of course, with Remco Evenepoel, where he had his black rain jacket on early, and there was plenty of times where I saw that he had long finger gloves on, so he is dressed slightly warmer than Remco Evenepoel. Now we go into 70 kilometers to go, and we'll see that Remco Evenepoel is going up the climbs on the laps, and he has going up the Mur with 70 kilometers. It's the first passage there, so just around 70K. He's going up. We'll see his black rain jacket unzipped. He's near the current road world champion, Tadej Pogačar, and Remco's jacket's unzipped. And if we look at his glasses, well, they're fogging up. Okay, why are they fogging up? Well, when you go up the Mur, it's super steep, 19% sections. We all know how famous his climb is. When he's going up, he's got it unzipped. Once you unzip the jacket, it's going to have a heat wave that's coming up, and it's going straight up into your face, and it's going to fog the glasses. I've gone out and done a bunch of motorcycle riding here in Bend, Oregon in the wintertime when it's freezing cold condition and we've had some rain. And a lot of the bigger guys, when they're motorcycling, they have all their jackets on. When we stop, their goggles freeze up right away or fog up right away because the heat's coming from the body here. And of course, with Remco Evenepoel's jacket opened up a little bit, some of the heat will blow out from the wind, but a lot of it's going to come straight up into the face, and that's why we see his glasses are a little bit fogged up. The glasses being fogged up is also another sign that, of course, he's producing a lot of heat. So we're going to see just after the first passage of the Muir, when they come through the feed zone, that's where Remco Evenepoel pulls off his black rain jacket, and we'll see him actually toss it in the picture on camera over to his soigneur that's on the side of the road there, the right side, as he gets rid of his rain jacket. Now we're talking 70 kilometers to go. At this point in time, a lot of the professional peloton at Flèche Wallonne here at 2025 is starting to lose their jackets off the back and give it to the team cars and all that stuff. So Remco Evenepoel looks to be dressed still about right when you compare it to most of the peloton. Again, I'd like to have leg warmers on and I'd still have long finger gloves on at this moment, but Remco Evenepoel, clearly his hands haven't been as affected by the cold as mine are. And remember, not everybody is feeling the same in the same conditions. So a lot of times you think if you're cold, the person next to you might be cold, but if you're 140 pounds and the guy next to you is 170 that's racing his bike, he's not going to feel the same kind of cold that you're feeling. If you've finished your career at an age like I did at 42, 43, 45 years of age, well, you're going to have a different kind of effect from cold than some kid at 24. So Remco Evenepoel might not need the gloves, but I would have had them on. But the sign that he's never put them on throughout this whole race tells me that he probably couldn't have been too cold. Now, I'm not saying he didn't have some cold moments when they're dropping down the descents, because normally what happens when you're bike racing, you climb up the hill, and just like we saw Muir de Huy, you start heating up the body, fogs up the glasses, you drop down the hill, and of course the wind, because now you're doing 70, 80 kilometers an hour going downhill instead of 15 and 20 going up. Now all of a sudden the wind has pushed that heat off your body and it's made that heat disappear, so you don't get the warmth of it. So every rider would be cold going down the descent. But the big difference between Flèche Wallonne and let's say a Tour de France stage where you're doing some alpine climbs, the alpine climbs could take you 40 minutes to get down. You lose all the heat and you're seriously freezing. Here at Flèche Wallonne, you could get cold for a moment when you drop down the descent. And once they start racing along the flats again, you'll heat back up. And of course, every time you're going up the Sharif climb, you're going to get, of course, warmer, and then you're going to get a little bit colder down the descent, but you'll warm up again. So let's go a little bit further, though, into 20 kilometers to go as we're on the last circuit there, of course, Flèche Wallonne. Circuit's about 36 kilometers long, and as we come into about 20 kilometers to go thereabouts, we're going up one of the first of the final climbs here on the last lap, and we see Remco Evenepoel take his jacket off, and he's going to take his jacket off, and he's going to pass it off again, so now he's in race mode. No gloves on, no jackets, going to have just his jersey on, probably wearing an undershirt underneath, but as hard as I tried, I could not tell if he was wearing an undershirt under his jersey, so we'll just assume that he's ready to go in race mode regardless, because you wouldn't take the undershirt off anyways. So he goes up over the two climbs. We come in the Muir de Huy. Tadej Pogačar lights everyone up in a sit-down mode without even standing up, and when he first accelerates, I don't even think it's an attack. It's more of a feeler. He accelerates a little bit as Ben Healy was attacking on the left. Tadej Pogačar is going on the right. This is a feeler attack. This is not even a 100% attack from Tadej Pogačar. That's how good the Slovenian kid was. He looks back over his shoulder. He sees half a bike length gap there to Remco Evenepoel. Puts out another little feeler. Realizes he has a gap there. And then he's going full sit-down acceleration attack up the Muir de Huy trying to win the 25 edition. Tadej Pogačar did not even stand up until 150 meters to go that I saw on camera anyways. And then, of course, won by over 10 seconds on second place and about 19 seconds on Remco Evenepoel. Now, again, if we go into the interview from Remco Evenepoel, he'll talk about being cold. But the problem with that is I think there's more to it than being cold. I don't think it's just cold. When you look at how everyone else was dressed and the conditions, it was about 9 Celsius, so we'll throw it at about 46, 48 degrees in rain. So it's certainly cold out there. I do not doubt that. You just need to see the interviews after the race to see the rider shivering left and right like Tom Pidcock was in his interview to know that, yes, it was cold, but cold after the race, doing an interview while it's cold outside is completely different than racing up the Muir. When we look at dive a little bit deeper into the results, we see Remco Evenepoel was 9th, not 2nd. Okay, if he was second, he had a little problem with the cold. If you're ninth, something dramatically went wrong. And I would bet, without a 100 guarantee, but if I had to bet, I would say that he bonked going up the climb. In his interview, he said he felt good all day. That's why Soudal Quick-Step rode the front. They played a tactical battle where they were picking up speed through all the technical twisty sections and crosswinds and trying to put the whole peloton under pressure, because Remco Evenepoel said he felt good throughout the whole race, all the way until that moment when Tadej Pogačar attacked, when we're talking about the last 1.5 kilometers there on the Mur de Huy. So I believe, yes, he could have been cold, but I don't think he could have been any more cold than any of the other riders were experienced out there. And when we look at the ninth position, I got to believe there's got to be a calorie issue added in there or some other problem deeper than just being cold. So every time you finish a bike race, especially a semi-classic or a classic or a monument, you want to dissect what the tactics were. If you look at UAE team Emirates, where Tadej Pogačar's interview said afterwards, his team raced perfectly. I got to agree, they were perfect. Dress-wise, he looked perfect throughout the whole race. And then, of course, he delivered the devastating blow there with 500 meters to go when Ben Healy started the acceleration. But UAE team members were fantastic. Soudal Quick-Step, I have no problem with their tactics. I thought they raced good throughout all of Flèche. He had teammates around him all the way to in crucial moments. He was in the right position and right time when he started the Mur de Huy. And at 500 meters, his legs fell apart. I don't think it's cold. When he looked as good as he did throughout Flèche Wallonne, I'm not arguing that he was cold. I'm saying that he didn't drop because he was cold. I'm pretty certain it looks more like a calorie issue to me, or a whole other problem beyond that. But at this moment, when we look at, of course, his first win of the 25 season, the Evenepoel, well, he had huge accelerations there with Wout van Aert. His sprint at the finish there at the Evenepoel was fabulous, where he beat Wout van Aert into the line. And of course, when we go into Amstel Gold, we don't know if he had that same kind of acceleration as Tadej Pogačar had when Tadej attacked with Julian Alaphilippe. And we're talking just under 50 kilometers ago. But we know, of course, that Remco Evenepoel had good power at Amstel Gold because he bridged the gap with Skilmos going up to Tadej Pogačar. And his sprint looked exceptionally dialed, but he just seemed to jump a little bit too early to me at Amstel Gold, and that leads me to believe that he possibly could have won Amstel Gold if he had jumped from the front just a little bit later, it's closer to under 200 or even at 150, or you wait till you see Tadej Pogačar start his sprint, then you start yours and you go to the line. But either way, I don't believe it's the cold, although we'll never really know. And that's the problem when we're talking about human beings. We're not robots, so it's always difficult to pinpoint one reason. You know, if NASA's sending off spacecrafts up in the air and they can see all the digital readouts and they can see that one of the panels fell off and the thing blew up. But when we're talking about human beings, when you're cold all day, like Remco Evenepoel said he was, it's easy to pinpoint that it's the cold. But if you're not wearing gloves all day, and you don't have leg warmers on all day, and you got rid of your jacket at 70 kilometers ago, well, if you took it off at 70 kilometers ago and you didn't put it back on, that's a knucklehead move for sure. So either way, there was a mistake made, but I don't believe it's the cold. Hope you guys appreciate my take up here on Beyond the Covers. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. I'll see you for the next edition real soon.